Good evening and Happy New Year, and welcome to our first political show of 2017. I am Anne Kiguta. We are taking a look at what promises to be an incredible year ahead with the elections around the corner. Let me introduce my guests to you. To my far left, Aden Duale, Jubilee's Aden Duale, leader of the majority in the National Assembly. Next to me is Professor Peter Kagwanja, the UNDP resident rep for elections. On my right is ODM's Jakoyo Midiwo, who is also the deputy minority leader. And next to him is Dr. Edward Kisiangani, our resident political analyst. Gentlemen, welcome to the program and Happy New Year. Prof, you must be particularly excited because finally, after years of debating the politics of this country, it's election year. How do you feel about it?
I feel great, and I think now we have to separate the boys from the men. It is starting off. The battle is on. We hope it is not going to be violent, but we need to choose leaders through elections. And if you lose, bad luck for you. If you win, you are also privileged.
What do you think is going to be the most interesting thing to watch in the run-up to the elections? What will you be looking at in parties?
I think we are going to, our democracy is going to be tested to the limit, because a number of parties will want to help some candidates to go through without following the democratic process. That is an issue, because you will find that political parties are crying that we need to create a democratic country. But after some time, you realize that inside there are jobs reserved for the boys and girls, and then they knock out certain people. That is going to be a real problem, and it will be tested. Whether you are talking about Jubilee or CORD, that is going to be tested to the limit. But what more critical is the fact that there is going to be, if we don't watch out the way we talk to people, the way we communicate our messages, this political contest is not necessarily going to, it should not necessarily be a violent confrontation. It should be about issues. But you will see time and time again before August, a number of people will want to settle their scores through violence. That is something that we should be checked here. And then the last thing that I think is likely to happen, there could be a couple of surprises. A few people, I think many MPs will lose their posts because they have not lived up to the expectations. The real battleground is going to be in the counties. I think in the counties, people are very disillusioned by county governments, and they will want them to account for the money they have been given, and that one also will means that there will be a lot of casualties in the counties. So that is really how the year is going to be, and people will be desperate to win the elections in whichever way. You will hear about which doctors coming to assist people, some of them getting naked in order to wash their water and give it to the voters. You will hear these stories in the newspapers, some importing witches from Nigeria. It will be part of the electoral cuisine.
Oh, the electoral cuisine.
Yes.
Duale, is this going to be a real high-stakes election, maybe higher than the stakes that we saw in the last poll?
No, I think generally every election in our country is high-stake. I mean, Kenya is a one of the best democracies in Africa. But this year is going to be a year where the Kenyan voters will get another opportunity to elect their leaders from MCA up to the president. From where I sit, this will be the year that the Jubilee administration, which I belong to, a coalition, will put to the people of Kenya the fulfillment of the promises that we made to the people, our scorecard, from healthcare to education to infrastructure to social security, to the national security. It will be an opportunity for Kenyans now to see and give them a scorecard of the administration. Secondly, and most important thing, the first quarter of the year will be where the party primaries will be conducted. So we anticipate a number of leaders, members of parliament, senators, governors, to be victims, because that is the nature of the Kenyan politics.
Midiwo, I beg your pardon. For you, is it going to be a high-stakes election, higher than the one previously witnessed? And how do you feel about party primaries?
Well, very high. And wherever it is not high just yet, I would want to appeal to the public to make it very high stakes, particularly local elections. You know, one of the things which has affected our political process is that our elections were always around promise of change, new constitution, generational change. We have seen all those. Now we have to deal with the effects of it. But now the public, the way I understand the new direction Kenya must go is for the people to ask for greater accountability from leadership at all levels, but particularly the county governments, so that Kenyans must know that trillions have been spent in the last couple of years through the county government structure. And really, there's nothing to show for it. And the only way something will be to show for it is if people elect good leaders. So if nothing else, Kenyans must give us as a people good MCAs and good governors.
Sounds like you're saying devolution has been a failure in the first round.
No, I think in the first round it has serious challenges which are basically expected. Most governors that we have basically came from the streets, and many who came from the political systems are people who knew what devolution was going to be, but they also recognized there are no laws. So they are basically, you're dealing with somebody who is very aware that he is operating without some laws. So the propensity to do wrong was always visiting.
So you want it to be a high-stakes election. How do you feel about primaries?
Well, the parties. Remember last year when my friend Duale and many people from my side, including Baba and UK, said this thing about no party hopping. And if you go back to the Hansard, the things I said the political parties cannot talk about restricting political movement without talking about democratization of the political parties. You cannot have a scenario where just in a few weeks ago I was talking to, addressing particularly some members of my party who say they will select candidates. And the same party has collected money from people. When you hear such things, then you know that that mouth is dirty. That tongue is one that courts chaos. And so, because it is going to be so high, even at the national level, I had asked, late last year, I had asked Majority Leader that through a miscellaneous law we must do something to deal with political violence. If you realize I was a victim, just went from church to go to address people whose land is being grabbed by the county government. But we must do a law that penalizes the candidates alongside the stone thrower. Because now you are at a situation where so many people are carrying guns. These are illegal guns. The government, by its own stats, is saying over 600,000 guns are on the streets, and they are in major cities. We must make an election crime.
Right. And of course, violence is an election offense.
Yes.
But Prof, to come to you, in particular relation to party primaries, and because we've already seen political parties have a very hard time when it comes to disciplining rogue elements. I mean, the quote-unquote expulsion, which should really be the ultimate tool that a party has to rein in errant members, is something they've not been able to achieve. How likely is it that parties, as they are strong enough to deal with this looming concern that there is over the nomination process, and in particular, as Midio has said, the violence factor?
Let me take it from where you've raised the parties themselves becoming cohesive within themselves, because that's the first problem. Jubilee is a party that can be said now to be new, because it's replacing the old Jubilee coalition. Now it's a Jubilee party. And the challenges that the coalition faced are not the same challenges that the party is going to face. So Jubilee has to come into terms not only with the internal democratization, but as a ruling party has to be seen to be inclusive of other parts. So the challenge is, how do you get inclusive without being accused of penetrating or invading other parties' territories? The tough wars between parties going to be stiffer. Going to Western Kenya, going to Lower Eastern, getting to the coast is an affront to CORD or NASA.
So what can parties do?
So that is one. On the when you come to NASA, I think to CORD, the problem is the decision of what really they are going to be. And we are back to 2002, where NAC was being formed. We are NAK, NARK, and what next? Now, currently, we have CORD, which seems to be in limbo. Nobody knows whether it is the party that's going to be or the party that's not to be. On the horizons is a new party called NASA, which seems to have figures identifying with it, but no structures agreed upon as yet. And there is a more solid party, or two solid parties. ODM is solid, with a history over 10 years and with the constituency across the nation. And is it going to commit a party suicide in order to allow NASA to emerge? And so
Are these the things that will make it difficult for parties to survive intact the nomination process?
The first question within the CORD coalition is the future of CORD itself, on the future of NASA, or the future of ODM. We are not even talking about primaries or not primaries yet, because we've not even defined what primaries you are forming bound.
If I could come to you, Prof, just so that we can dispense of the issue of parties before we move forward to the structure of now, will NASA actually become a party, or what coalitions are we likely to see going forward? Let's respond to Midio's question on the issue of violence, and particularly the structures within political parties, the structure within existing legislation, to make sure that party primaries does not begin the downhill descent in seeing some really ugly election-related cases of violence. Do parties have the requisite structures? Is the Office of the Registrar of Parties powerful enough? Do we need emergency legislation to rein in political actors?
I think so, because if you look at how people have been behaving for the last 1 year, they have already made a decision who should win the election, whether governor, whether MCA, or a senator, or even president. So when you have a situation where people don't want to wait for the results of the election, but they have already decided who wins, they do not accept any alternative. So in that case, therefore, at the political party level also, there is that intolerance from the political party's perspective as a whole that they cannot lose the polls. But even inside the political parties themselves, we have particular leaders who think they are infallible, they are untouchable, and they will win. So there will be internal violence, but after they have sorted out the internal violence, there will also be the challenge of external violence, meaning the combat that they will engage with the other parties. Now that means that we are on the brink of a very dangerous situation. So what we are supposed to do is we need proper legislation, and that legislation alone is not good. We must also have party structures, and even Parliament can look for ways within this legislation to empower parties more to even take action even before the police come in. And everybody must be named in the open. Because when you look at it, if we leave it to go beyond where it is now, a lot of our people will be killed, they will be maimed, and that is not acceptable. Right. And the parties should sign a deal with people. In fact, part of the legislation should be that it is possible to disqualify candidates even when you have just 2 days before the elections, if they engage in violence or they engage in destruction of property. So this is a big challenge. Then the last thing that you need to think about is that when it comes to elections, the law on integrity, the law on how people's value system is very weak. Some people have integrity issues. They have been involved in stealing money. They have once promoted violence. What will they have been involved in corruption. Yes. What will political parties do to, for example, lock out very, very friendly, quote unquote, governors, very friendly ministers who have been, you know, implicated in some form of corruption or not.
Let's put that question to Duale, because you face this situation in particular when it comes to the entry of personalities such as Anne Waiguru, who, though she has not been convicted of any crime, her name has literally been dragged through the mud and associated perhaps with the worst of corruption scandals that has tainted the Jubilee administration. What kind of approach is the party going to use when it comes to, quote unquote, such controversial characters? Are you going to keep a wide berth, or is it going to be free for all?
Party leadership, as Professor Kisiagani has said, must now stand to be counted. That they have no sacred cows. And what's happening in most political parties, from the county position, governor's position, you have seen governors saying, in all both sides saying, we have been funding these political parties the last 4 years,
right,
in their rallies and everything. So, party leader, you
owe me something.
Yes, you must give me the party ticket. That is completely contrary to what Honorable Jakoyo said. That is not the feeling of the voters in that county, who have faced a lot of, accountability issues and integrity issues with that governor. So that's why we are going to have a serious problem. And, map the country, look at Mombasa, the contest between Hassan Omar and Joho. Go to Kakamega between Boni Khalwale and Oparanya. Come to Kiembu, go to Muranga, look at those.
But you've said something very interesting. You've said parties in themselves do not have the structures to measure things such as integrity.
Yes.
So Jubilee being the, if you like, the lead party to the extent that it's the governing party,
yes.
what are you going to do in such cases?
That parties, in fact, must live by what Parliament has passed. If Parliament has passed a report with a recommendation that Honorable Duale should not hold public office, that party should not allow me, even entertain me,
to have the ticket.
To have a ticket. And the same and the same thing should happen to ODM when I go to ODM. It should be across the board. It should be across the board. Secondly, if an individual is involved in violence, political parties, and I agree. In fact, we are recalling the House to deal with the election law. We must put very stringent penalties for any candidate who is involved in violence-related activity to be barred by IBC.
You're saying something interesting.
Let me finish.
You're saying that you're not going to necessarily give somebody the election ticket, but there are some people who automatically are disqualified from running for it.
Where we are between the rock and hard space is now the constitutional provision.
So how do you enact this?
The law says you cannot bar an individual until he exhausts all the platforms provided for within his rights. But I think political parties can do better and say, Honorable Duale, Honorable Jakoyo, and so, you have integrity issues. From where we sit, you can go and vie even as an independent. But our party, we feel we want to set certain standards.
I want to come to something, Professor Kagwanja, you mentioned in the issues you're looking out for. And it's a question of whether we will see these parties as we have known them to be by the time we get to the ballot. And this particularly is a situation that faces CORD. We've seen, of course, a coming together around a quote-unquote super alliance. As ODM, what do you see the super alliance as? Is this something that would be a useful pre-election coalition, and when do you expect it to be formalized as such, if at all that's the path to take? Do you see the super alliance as a making of a political party, or is ODM in itself strong enough to go it alone and others can follow?
Well, I think the most important thing Professor Kagwanja mentioned was the scenario of 202. If I can tell you, in June of 202, I was in Raila's office when he was the minister for energy. And he told me when it appeared Moi was not going to allow fair contest, Raila told me, then I will make Kibaki the president. Just to change things. This CORD thing is going to be very interesting. This CORD NASA, I don't think it is up to Raila or Musalia. It is the feeling out there on the streets. It doesn't matter. And I was happy the other day when Musalia said, you can name it anything. What I see Kenyans to want us to do is to give them a way forward about issues. In fact, when throughout last year I said it in many shows, that there has to come a time when people who want to lead this country will talk issues. And I said it very strongly when we were talking about interest rates. When we have some basic social and economic issues in this country that a narrative must, even if it were NASA, we can't say Jubilee is corrupt and keep talking about NYS and this and expect that to be enough. We must say this is what we would do and this is how we would do it. To me, I think that will move this country to the next level.
But which is the party that espouses that, that embodies that, that has led with that kind of ideology? Will it be a super alliance or will it be court?
Whatever we are going to call it, I think it must be built around some ideas, which is lacking in this country. Unless people at our level begin talking about what is lacking, we know everything that is wrong. But I think we must begin to put issues on the table. If I can tell you, the Jubilee government, why did it make sense to the youth? Talked about digital stuff. They spoke about some things which, when you saw them, you couldn't convince the public that there was generational change, that there was digital future, that there, you understand? Here we must talk about issues that feel our people secure and give them hope. I think, as it were, the political class, Jakoyo included, we are not giving Kenyans hope.
Let me clarify the position, because certainly it is about issues. And in fact, we're going to return to the talking points. Duale kicked it off by saying they're going to go back to Kenyans and say, this is what we've done. And you're going to be talking very much about the projects that you've unveiled, and that's fine. But the reality is, regardless of what the issue the opposition will choose to campaign on, it will need a face and a voice for that. Exactly. Are you concerned that by dilly-dallying or taking more time before consolidating this, you may be losing your audience, the captive audience that you need for that message?
No, not really. I think we would have loved to lock Kalonzo, Raila, Wetangula, Musalia in a room and tell them, let's see smoke. I don't think is the ideal scenario coming into 27. I think many people in the political class, and interestingly, the media is not seeing it. They're not seeing that power, which has emanated from this constitution, has gone to the people. Power has gone to the people. Must define. You can't tell us that it must be so and so. Let us see people, and there are several ways of doing it.
I don't agree with that.
Well, this is just my opinion, and I can say
you're going to wait it out for the people to
I can say,
pick a leader.
And it has to do with this issue of nominations of our political parties.
You see
Prof, can I just 1 second? You know, when we say parties have to be democratic, we want predictability. There's nothing wrong with saying Professor Kisangani is our candidate for Mathare North. Period, as ODM. Nothing is wrong with that. But it must be kept that predictable. I cannot then come and tell Anne, go and pay your 250,000, knowing that I want. That is what annoys Kenyans. We seem to think that Kenyans are stupid. So what I'm saying, using the fourth estate, let us put issues that Kenyans would want to see changed immediately. Because you can only do so much in 5 years as an administration. And let's see if those issues, the political groupings can articulate them and convince Kenyans. Because I really seem to think that what we are confronted with is too old.
You're going to wait it out. Prof, what do you think? Is that a good strategy?
I think
TikTok, it's election year.
Yeah, you see, it's not that, and we want the media is not doing enough to make the political class accountable. They have done it in various ways. But there is the dilemma in which our people find themselves is this. Here you have two huge movements, political movements, you know, CORD or probably NASA and the Jubilee. Now, what makes a Kenyan choose between Jubilee and the CORD and say, this is what I want and I will get it in CORD, and this is what I want and I will get it in Jubilee? That is the critical point, because there are so many people who once have served in this government and they are now in the opposition. There are others who have been in the opposition that have moved on the side of government. This is the same political class, quote unquote, at Capitol Hill. Is there anything fundamentally different that, for example, people will get for voting for CORD and or Jubilee? Is there any specific change? So he has mentioned he has mentioned this Trump. We don't have yet a Trump. Trump is not a typical Washington Capitol Hill person.
He's an outsider.
He's an outsider. But the group that you have now, Jubilee and the CORD, are seasoned politicians who have been doing their business. So when you ask me, am I going to choose Musalia Mudavadi, for example, then I ask you, what fundamental thing can Musalia Mudavadi do? The only thing I can help me to choose is to check Mudavadi's record, whether he ever in his own capacity changed Kenya in a special way. Then you can say, between Uhuru Kenyatta and maybe Raila Odinga, do you see anything fundamentally different between choosing Uhuru or choosing Raila? Once you make that decision, that's okay for you. But the bottom line is that the difference is very thin. It's very thin. What
all establishment.
Because we are dealing with an establishment group. In my opinion, Jubilee is in power, but CORD and NASA are the only reason why they are making a lot of noise is they want to replace Jubilee and even commit more crimes than what Jubilee has done.
Are you concerned with IEBC's ability to meet the timelines and to deliver a credible poll?
Now, first, there is an assumption among Kenyans that institutions equals individuals. And I think we need to dispense with that mentality. The presidency will be there long after Uhuru Kenyatta. The other offices will be there long after Jakoyo Midiwo. So GEM will always have a member of parliament. What Jakoyo Midiwo will bring to GEM is his personality, the style of doing things. We have had IEBC since we set it up under the old constitution and the new constitution, and we have an institution which has matured. The fact that the commissioners are changing hands and so on shouldn't be what should worry us. It is about the capacity. At the stage at which we are in our constitution, in our development of our democracy, is institutional consolidation. That's the stage. We did with activism in the streets. We then played activism on the constitution, and the constitution created the institutions. Now we are now supposed to be building institutions, and IEBC is one of the institutions that we have really put premium on because of our past experiences. I guess every institution, even in America and here, is work in progress. That's what we have to accept. That you'll never have what you call this is the best. No, every institution is work in progress. So issues about timelines, whether IEBC is ready or not, that is basically diversionary. The second thing is about the deadlines. How is it
diversionary? They are expected to deliver a credible election.
Yeah, but the institution is there. The institution has been there. It is the one that delivered the other election. It's not a new institution we are creating. It is the same institution.
But the timelines are different.
The timelines here are about the date for the election. And we must make a decision here. Everybody knows that on November 8th or 5th, every 4 years, an American president will be voted for. So you have a date with your nation as a citizen. And it's your choice. You have a date.
It almost sounds like you're saying it doesn't matter whether we make the timelines or not.
Let me make my point, and then I'll be done with it. Then, on January 20, 12 o'clock, America will have a president, irrespective of the chaos that will be there in between those months. By 20th of January, you'll have a president. Democracy is predicated upon predictability. If there is any element of unpredictability in a democracy, we have entered a very dangerous zone. Why we fixed in the constitution the second Tuesday
August.
or the second Tuesday of August every 5th year was to start bringing now that predictability. Then we built that into the constitution, into the various acts by parliament, now to set the stage of what time do we have for petitions, what time do we have for this, and it's laid out. I think it's time we start building what we call traditions, because if we don't do that, we'll be skidding on very, very thin ice as a democracy. Now, if every parliament think that this is the time to change this because of this, or to change this because of this, there must be something hoary, something circumscribed that we cannot overrule. I think personally,
none of that exists right now.
It should exist. It is there. It is there in the constitution. We are on the first date. If we change it now, we will change it to eternity. We must go by the way this constitution is, irrespective. We squeeze ourselves into it, finish on the 8th, and then thereby we now have the predictable series of every...
No, I'm not talking about changing the election date. I'm talking about timelines, the various milestones that must be met before the election is held.
That is the point. You must, as a country, you must work to finish them. We do exams. Not all students who sit the exams have done what they would have liked to do. But you sit the exam because the time has come and it has been set and it's agreed upon. It is not like this nation is going anywhere. Midiwo's son or daughter will be fighting for game or wherever Nairobi, wherever she wants to fight in Kenya in 20 years to come.
Right.
So we always put this country on a panic mode every time. We must set this country free. We don't have to put it on a panic mood button all the time that we have.
Duale, do you think the concern around the election timelines and IEBC's general preparedness is equal to panic mode?
No, I think the issue you have raised is not about the election date. The election date is cast in the constitution.
Yes.
We will have election come the second Tuesday of August 2017.
Yes.
But every institution has a strategy. There's a strategic plan of IEBC in how to achieve that free, fair, independent, peaceful election. And there are certain timelines. In fact, myself and Honorable Jakoya had issues with some of the timelines. But because we were told by both our coalitions we should not change a comma, we've put timelines. Those timelines are very critical. I totally disagree with Professor Kagwanja. If there was a timeline for the voter audit, register audit, that must be met. If there was a timeline on voter registration, that time must be met. If there was a timeline on when the ballot papers have to arrive, those timelines must be kept. I mean, they can't run away from it. And why do we put the timelines? So that the preparation for the next general election is different from the previous ones where we had issues. Now let me come back to the other issue. And I want to speak as a minority. The biggest problem we're facing in our country, politically, when it comes to NASA and all this, is the ethnic mobilization of the political ethnic mobilization. Leaders are just mobilizing their constituencies, their ethnic background. What happens? Issue-based politics disappears. Issue-based politics. And people have not followed. One of the countries in Africa which is ethnically divided in politics is Ghana. And if you look every year, always, if I don't know about this year, but the previous years, the difference between the president and the opposition is always 75,000 votes, 100,000 votes. That's why you see today the political leadership are so greedy that they have forgotten the constitution and they want to amend the constitution to create positions for themselves. You know, today you see some people are thinking back of bringing another vice president, another prime minister, chief minister. Why? The constitution belongs to the people of Kenya.
You think it's about the egos, the personalities?
It's about greed, and it's about ethnic, greed, where every tribe wants to get a share. What is wrong if we have one president, we have one deputy president, we have speakers, and we have everybody? But I feel so sad. And this goes down even not only to the big tribes, it even goes back to the small tribes. It's called clans, where I come from. Where the bigger the clan, it takes everything. So I think where we need to set out our country is that unless we see people from Mount Kenya region belonging to a political party which is based in Nyanza, you know, or people in Nyanza, Jacob Midio joining a party which ideally is led by a leader from Mount Kenya and winning the election. That is the Kenya our children want to see.
Right, let me come to you all now for a final round of comments, and you can add to that.
It's a point I wanted to... As part of
your final comments,
yes,
sure, go ahead.
It's a point I wanted to follow up on what Jacob said, that what we have seen, and I want to assert here, from a political analysis point of view, Jubilee has a very clear agenda and vision. I have a problem with it, but it has, which is developmentalism. In other words, we want to develop the country, modernize the country, and all that. That has its own limits, because you've got to carry everybody along. What is driving this development? It is digital. Digital is not coffee, digital is not this. So we've got to begin analyzing the developmental agenda in terms of its trickle effect on the ordinary Kenyans. The Jubilee seems to have a vision, which I said I have an issues with, but I can tell the clarity of their vision, the developmentalism. The problem I have is with the ODM called NASA axis. That axis has perfected criticism. It is true. It has done what an opposition party is supposed to do, to hold the government into account. But it has also done something that an opposition party is supposed to do, to project itself as an alternative government by virtue of projecting its own vision and vision of the new order that is bringing about. In 2007, nobody in PNU had any illusion about what ODM stood for. It was so clear, like the morning sunshine, that this is what ODM stands for. And it had gone to the details that if you are in northeastern Kenya, or northern Kenya for that matter, you knew what ODM is going to do with your camel. It's going to insure it. It's going to insure your cow. So everything was basically rounded up in a wonderful vision. I don't see it now in this ODM NASA axis. It is about Jubilee's corruption. It is Jubilee's embezzlement. It is about this. It's about this. So I see Jubilee literally scoring 75 to 90% of the national vote, if it is able to overcome that criticism. Basically, sack everybody who is corrupt and clean yourself and tell ODM, now that we have cleaned ourselves, what do we do? I mean, are you seeing the point? Because there's no alternative challenge in terms of a vision.
But I think, Jacob, you actually touched on this and said it needs to be about issues. What's the challenge?
You see, I think you are not there yet. Yes. You see, the point where my job is to answer Duale is still here.
Yes.
But then we will move into the campaign mode, like what you have said about 2007 and the camel scenario.
Yeah,
that was our manifesto. That was in the manifesto. And that is where I want to maybe guide a professor for once in my life, my professor here, that you may not see anything in Musalia. But what I see is that once there's a manifesto, the problem we have in Africa is that people do all these rosy manifestos and they don't care about them. They do not care about them. And I can give you an example. Even this issue of respect for the law. When you see our current president, you know, the Supreme Court declared him the president, and he respected that. But you can see how many struggles we have had with him where they have tried to disobey the court. You understand? This is not my friend Uhuru's problem. It's an African problem. People at our level, with the kind of exposure which we now have with the fourth estate, I think we need to strive to take this debate to the next level. So that if you promised people, and the Honorable Duale has said, we will be asking them. You know, we will ask them about the laptops. You know, in the last holidays, you saw the president saying he's not calling them laptops anymore. He's calling them digital gadgets. And I found that very interesting, that the laptops are now digital gadgets.
They are the same.
No, that digital gadgets can be toys. Digital gadgets can be toys.
Let's hope he didn't mean toys.
Yes, okay, so what I'm saying is, we must begin to force us to respect the law. And us means individuals and institutions. One last thing I wanted to say is that this issue about election violence, we must make it a common crime.
Yeah.
So that there is nothing to do with elections when you hurt people. You know, when you can wake up and stone people, burn people, you know, and I've seen it so much. I've been in this thing long enough to see how people think during electioneering it is okay to break the law. And we can stop it. And I think sitting on this panel, me and Dwale have a duty.
Yeah.
Let us at least attempt in the next few months to say that you break the law, you go to, in fact, leave no room for the judge to make a decision. Just go to prison, let you be judged when you are in there.
All right. Prof, your final words.
My final words are, I'm very encouraged by the leader of majority and
Deputy Minority Leader.
Deputy Minority Leader for saying they actually abhor violence. This contest is not a matter of life and death. This is what our country should be told. We know somebody will win, another one will lose. So when we make it a matter of life and death, we hurt each other. When the chips are finally down, the president of Kenya will be a Kenyan, the MP will be a Kenyan, the MCA is going to be a Kenyan, so there will be no foreigner in charge. Those who may not make it must accept the verdict. They still have another fighting chance. All they need is to ask God to give them life, and they can still have another chance to fight. I would like to look at this situation this way. If we can have an election that deals with issues, it will be very good for our country, because it doesn't matter who becomes president, but we have major issues of unemployment, youth, you know. It's not just one side of government that is corrupt. There are many people who are corrupt even in the opposition. So it is another common problem that we should confront together, just like a crime. Unfortunately, our people are still behind there, but they need leadership. The kind of leadership that Jagoyo and our brother the Duale is saying, let them focus on issues and then forget about tribe. We have had elections being determined by tribal ethnic mobilization. For once, the republic should change and choose people because of issues rather than what? Ethnic mobilization. And then when we are out of the scene, our children will say, we dreamt and had a vision that will endure the test of time. Right. Thank you.
Majority Leader.
I think this year, few months to the general election, I can say it without any fear of contradiction, that we have assembled our team, we have our candidate, we have our party, we have our manifesto. We will get an opportunity to tell the people of Kenya how we have implemented our manifesto and the social contract we had with them in 2013. The NASA thing cannot be equated to what was in 2002. For one, because the Jubilee team of 2013 is still intact. Nobody has crossed to NASA. The core team is still there. They've only got Musalia Mudavadi with about 450,000 votes. You know, the scenario in 2002 was where critical leadership left KANU. If today, for example, the deputy president and myself and many other leaders in Jubilee walk to CORD, then NASA will have a fundamental meaning. So our team is intact, our constituencies for 2013 are intact, and I am sure we have made significant inroads to people who never voted for us in 2013. I might say 20%, 30% in Coast Province, in Western Province, in Kisii, in other parts of the pastoral areas. And I'm sure for us, as a grumble with the many presidential candidates in NASA,
for you it's smooth sailing.
For us, we have hit the road, and this week, this month coming, our biggest headache is how to manage the party primaries. And I'm sure my prayer to Kenyans is that, as Prof have said, there will be a president, and he will be a Kenyan. Let us maintain peace. Let us maintain tranquility. Yes. Let us be one country and one nation.
That's a note to end it on, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Best of luck to all of you. It certainly will be an interesting year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. See you all. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.